Okay, next we have Dr. Carolyn Tan from RMIT. She's an award-winning researcher and she's going to come and speak to you. I think she's ready. You're all ready with your mic. So yeah, give her a round of applause and we'll welcome her warmly.
Can you guys hear me? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carol, and I teach entrepreneurship at RMIT University. I have been researching fast growth companies for the last 10 years, and there are numerous PhD projects that have been investigating this topic. Just wanted to know have you guys heard of the BRW Fast 100? Yes? Okay. So they are basically the CEOs or the founders that I've interviewed, and that is what my research is going to be based about. The topic is what fosters learning in these entrepreneurial firms. Oops. Okay, what I'll be talking about is giving you a brief outline on who these fast growth small to medium enterprises are, what exactly is learning orientation, the importance of leadership, providing a stimulating work environment, and employee satisfaction as a facilitator of learning orientation, and giving you handy tips of what these CEOs have actually talked about to encourage learning within their organization. And I will conclude by giving you the consequences of learning orientation. We assume that it has a positive effect on firm performance, but it also affects other kinds of variables or factors. Okay, these are examples of some fast growth companies in Australia. I'm sure that a number of you are familiar with this. Most of these companies operate in service industries. Approximately 80 of them actually operate in service industries, targeting other businesses rather than end consumers. I have just done a search on brands that you possibly are familiar with. The SitePoint Group is an example. They own 99 Designs. I'm not sure whether you guys are familiar with 99 Designs, but they just recently received 35 million organizations. One, their entrepreneurs or their owner-managers are usually the founders of the firm. They impact the performance of the organization. A researcher has recently said, how can you actually separate the dancer from the dance? Another one would be they start their businesses based on prior experience that they have in the related industry. Why is this important? Because they've already built the network in the industry. You must remember that these companies are usually very young and they have a liability of newness. Therefore, once they can tap into their networks, they are able to build growth-oriented businesses. They also regularly consult coaches and have peer networks for advice, support, and direction. How they actually conduct their human resource practices is also relatively different to slow growth organizations. They invest in employees, so essentially employee development, providing financial incentives and availability of stock options for their employees as well. They are the best performing companies which actively develop new products and services, not necessarily new to the world, but just incremental innovation. They are always looking for new markets, finding new customers. But one thing that people have a misconception about fast growth companies is that they always look at what their competitors are doing. All the CEOs that I have interviewed say that we don't actually look at competitors. They use the analogy of driving a car. If you always look at the rear view mirror, you can't exactly see what's in front of you. They're so ahead of the market, and what they do is how do they actually compete? They just run a little faster than everybody else. This is not to say that they don't copy competitors if someone else is doing something really well. But who is their focus on? If you take the focus away from your competitors, then you focus on the customers. Some of these companies, they, for example, say that if a customer contacts us, we have to respond to an email within 24 hours or at least within a 10-hour period. Okay? It's not so difficult in a sense like there was this electrical cabling company. They said it's just something as being polite to your customers or just clearing up after you have actually done a job. It's those little things that actually make the difference to the customer. In terms of marketing, they don't spend a lot on marketing. What they try to do is they basically try to get things really cheap. They focus on guerrilla marketing. For example, spending time with beauty editors, or spending time with other people in your stakeholder chain. It's really about building relationships with people and building a network, which essentially that only costs somebody their time. Okay? So these companies are also known as gazelles, and they have attained growth rates of between 36 and 600% over a 4-year period. Most of them are very young, so they're under 10 years of age, and they don't only operate in the IT industry as some people might have that misconception. Only about 25% of fast growth companies operate in IT. The rest, as you can see in my previous slide, go across all industries from hospitality to airport parking to construction labor, what do you call it? And recruitment services. Okay, they might only comprise 2% of the US economy, but they generate 80 to 90% of the employment growth. So as you can see, in Australia, they're not very export focused. But having said that, 42% of fast startup firms actually say that they derive their revenue from exporting. And some of them derive up to 90%, 97% from exporting itself. So we are progressing in that sense where we are tapping the world market. But having experienced all this fast growth, there are also a lot of failures. In the US, half of the fast growth entities have folded within 5 years. So who are the survivors? You really got to invest in these survivors because they contribute to innovation, growth, and job growth and productivity gains. So that's just a brief background of what fast growth SMEs do and which industries they operate in. What actually gets them to learn? My research is all about understanding how leaders develop an environment of learning. How do they stay ahead of the pack? How do they get their employees to commit to learning, subscribe to a shared vision, and be open-minded about learning? Okay? These companies, as I said, demonstrate traits that are not ordinarily found in other firms. Before I tell you what fosters learning, I will tell you what does not foster learning. My research shows one of the most interesting findings is that bonuses and benefits linked to performance does not encourage learning. Therefore, it's not about the money. It's not to say you don't pay people enough. You pay them enough so they take money out of the table so that they can focus on creating good work. This is good news because leaders can then nurture a team without spending the money that they don't already have because they are really young and they are operating on a shoestring at times. So if money doesn't encourage people to learn, what does? Leadership. What do they have to do? They need to act as role models, stimulate employees intellectually by asking them to think about old problems in new ways, painting an interesting picture of the future by providing them a roadmap and telling them exactly where you want to go. As an example, how would you be a role model for everybody in the firm to follow? Okay? Leading in the forefront, constantly testing new ideas, testing new innovations, showing the employees that you are actually going to test it out, but you're also going to fail, and it doesn't matter because they have thoughts that it's okay to fail. Okay, you're not going to get punished for doing that. Leading with passion and vision. You need to be motivated and passionate yourself because if you're leading a team and you're not passionate and motivated, your team is not going to feel the same way as well. You need to be hands-on when needed. The second one would be intellectual stimulation. So how are you going to ask your employees to think differently? How do you get them to re-examine assumptions that they have made about work? Some of these companies, what they do is they allocate 1 day a month just to spend on anything regarding what they feel like creating. It could be a new product, it could be a new service, but not necessarily related to the product that they are working on. Okay, so it's something similar like what 3M does, where they allow, I think, 30% of time for employees to focus on creating new products. They also have think tanks where people actually set and encouraged to present their ideas. At the end of the day, a high performance culture is key because the pace of the environment is moving so fast that you actually need to keep up with the times. The next point is articulating a vision. How would you share that vision and paint an interesting picture for them? This is not about saying that I'm going to, sit you into a group and this is what we are going to achieve. This is all about also at the time when you're hiring the new person. You sit them down, ask them, this is what we intend to do, this is how we intend to do it. Do you have the same values as what we have as an organization? And that's how they go about hiring new recruits. One of the companies said that their 4 core values is to be brave, fresh, inspired, and true. And they do that all the time, and they're always constantly doing things with staff to remind them what they stand for and what they are aiming for. Okay? One of the CEOs actually cited that he thought that innovation and technology could create growth. But what he didn't think was that he didn't tell the employees about it, and they didn't know where he was going. So they didn't achieve, and that was his biggest mistake in that particular year. Lastly, encouraging them to be team players. You don't have a demarcations of roles and there's no monopoly on good ideas. Doesn't mean that if you're not operating in that particular department that you can't provide suggestions. And more cosmetics at Body and Bath brand. What they do is that everybody is kept up to speed, even though it does not concern them. The people or the employees actually thrive on that because they know what is going to happen, the new possibilities, and keeping them informed. It keeps the goals common to everyone because if they were very private about that, then there will be a lack of communication. The next point, which we found that also fosters learning, would be treating the people of the organization as the most valuable resource. Why? As we said, most of them operate in service industries, so the product that are selling are services. You cannot do this alone because if you are a founder or a CEO and you do not have all the people backing you, the environment is moving that fast that you need to surround yourself with the best people that you can actually get. As soon as you can afford to hire someone, go and get the best that is in the industry. One of the CEOs, she said that we have a company that is so fast growing that it's either people thrive and love it or they go, oh my goodness, what in the world have I got myself into? Okay, it is those people who stay that are actually the people who are moving forward. Other things that they do would be, out of the blue, provide them a reward of maybe giving them $100 David Jones vouchers, or writing them handwritten notes praising them, whether you're praising them publicly or you're sending them an email. Another thing that they do is providing them challenging roles and recognition amongst their peers. For example, they give them little stars when they work in a team, and they actually display these stars in their office, where at the end of the day they can claim something like, for example, like a trip to Melbourne and whatnot. This was a company that was based in Tasmania. Okay. At the end of the day, satisfied employees are happy employees. How do you make employees happy? Besides giving them roles that are challenging, one of the things they do is making sure that the kitchen is actually fully stocked. I don't know why that is important. I guess a lot of people like to eat. So it's like having the best coffee, having a coffee machine, having a foosball table, having music pumping, depends on what industry you're in. But yeah, basically having the kitchen full of food. And then how else are you going to be happy? Is that if you're just concentrating on doing your work. A lot of these CEOs have actually come from large organizations, and what they found was that they didn't like all the political backstabbing that happens in large organizations. So when they started their own business, they said that I do not want to have to worry about what people are saying to me. So if I don't have that worry in my head, therefore I can create the best work ever possible. Okay? They really focus on employee motivation. Another method which they use is to keep the oral communication and writing communications very open. How do you actually personally encourage openness? Some of them, they actually have this research at whatever their company name is. So you send in your ideas and everybody can have a look at their ideas. Another way they do this is by having an open office. So they don't want to be seen as though they're behind a door where there's behind some sort of ivory tower that people have no access to the CEO. Being able to walk into the room and express your feeling is something that is very important. One of the companies also does something like this. He says, what I feel like expressing. Basically, it's a concept where all of them sit down in a circle. I know it sounds kind of cliche, right? But they sit down cross-legged in a circle, and the person is supposed to say what I feel like expressing. Okay, so today I feel like my lights in my office is really dark. Right. Okay, what do you do about that? Okay, because it ruins my mood, or I'm not stimulated intellectually because the lights are dark. So they take down all those action points, and then the next time they do, they go and buy brighter lights. And then they end the saying by saying, this is what I feel like expressing. And nobody is allowed to interrupt, and that goes round through the room. So that's just an example of how these fast growth companies communicate within the organization. But they also have the liberty to do this because they are quite small. Majority of them have less than 50 employees, so they actually can go and do this. Okay, so communication is key. So leadership, communication, having an open climate, which is very happy. So it's all about employee satisfaction. That's just a summary of what I just said. We talk about leading from the front, telling them what they should be knowing of the organization. Being open, flat structure, free from internal politics. Remember, we talked about the large organizations. They didn't like the bureaucracy and the backstabbing within large organizations. Friendly and pleasant work environment. There was also one thing that I forgot to mention previously, which is having work-life balance. Some of them, they actually work 4-day weeks. If you have to go home and take care of your kids, or if you've got some sort of emergency, you have that flexibility as well. Recognition is more important than pay because a lot of these companies cannot afford to pay them the same amount that large, big corporates are able to pay. So what do they tell them? You have the opportunity to work for something that is valuable to you. It fits within your values. And the last one would be challenge, autonomy, and status outweigh the need for extrinsic rewards. Okay, so learning is all well and good. That's how you encourage learning. But the consequences of learning are also the development of marketing. So because you're aware of what is going on within the organization, you're able to develop better products that are possibly better than competitors, and you will also be able to develop better relationships with your suppliers or your customers and whatnot because you're constantly kept in the loop. In terms of supply chain capabilities, you are also able to share information across the different stakeholders in the industry. Okay, so did I go really, really fast? Was I too fast for you guys? Okay. Anyway, I was really trying to finish everything, and I just got to finish. Okay, so that's me. If you guys want to send me an email, I'm at RMIT. So thank you so much for listening to me.